Hello everyone, Tracy here with a little bit of playtime from the scrap room. Today I'm going to be playing with the MercyTiara Joy Mixed Media Kit, which includes these three items. We have Bo Bunny gold stencil paste, we have a Vicki Boutin stencil brush, and we have 3 Vicki Boutin stencils from her Peppermint Kisses collection for Christmas of 2023. And as you can see, I've already played a little bit, but I thought I would roll the cameras and play a little bit more so that you folks can see just how these supplies work. Now, these two are not really designed to work together. With a thick paste like this, you're really going to need something as basic as a popsicle stick will do the trick. If you have any of these little plastic offset scraper palette knife type of things. I happen to have a really nice one that I love to work with. You can use this with this, but with caution, because this is very thick and pasty and it's acrylic based, so it's going to dry very plasticky and could gum up your bristles. So it's not a great idea to use this in its full force on this. My thought was that this stencil brush would give you some help for those of you who are new to mixed media, might not have a whole bunch of different blending brushes and whatnot in your stash, to be able to apply some things that might already be in your stash. You can use any kind of ink, you can use mist, you can use any kind of these waxy color base. This is a gelato. You guys know I love my Faber-Castell gelatos, but those kinds of products are available in lots of different formats. We have some Prima water-soluble oil pastels here. Vicki Boutin herself has a line of crayons that I just couldn't get my hands on for the kit. But there are also distress crayons and all sorts of goodies and mists, and anything colorful that's not too thick can be applied with this. You can also apply this very, very thinly, and I will show you the difference in the looks, but I would recommend that you just clean your brush quickly afterwards so that it doesn't get gummed up. Now, it's just gonna dry into a plastic, so you could always just kind of like work it off, and you know, it might be a hassle. So I would recommend that you not allow this to dry on this, and you might not even want to use them together at all. But this will help you get your inks and mists and any other thing that you might not have necessarily bought for stenciling purposes, and allow you to extend those products into mixed media. I will be talking about how to use all 3 of these products. I have a little bit of packaging here that I'm going to use as a palette. You don't have to buy fancy supplies. You could use a paper plate, a plastic plate, a dish of any sort, anything to use as a palette. I just have this piece of plastic. I would recommend that right off the bat, if you're new to stenciling, that you just grab a bunch of different color products that you have and just play around and see how they all work. So I just grabbed a assortment. I have a Heidi Swapp Color Shine mist here. Any mist would work the same way that this mist works. I have anything that's waxy. This is a gelato, Faber-Castell gelato, so I have this as well. But like I said, you could use anything that also looks like this. The water-soluble ones are the ones that we'll be working with here because cleanup is easier and they just mix a little bit more easily. Anything for a palette knife, you don't need all of these things, but you might have popsicle sticks on hand. You can even use gift cards. We all have these on hand, these iTunes gift cards that we sent to that Nigerian prince who needed the code, so this is a great time to use those. The paper that I'm going to be using today, I just wanted to point out that the stencils themselves each come on a pretty pink paper that is fairly glossy, and you could actually use this as a palette to some extent. It might eventually start to get soggy, especially if you're using mists and water, but it would be a great palette for picking up some of these waxier substances or even ink before you add water. The paper that I'm going to be using, I just have some smaller pieces cut down, but I like to use this Strathmore mixed media paper. It will stand up a little bit more. It looks like a basic cardstock, but it has this vellum surface, so that makes it a little bit more smooth than normal, and it is designed for mixed media, so it'll take a fair amount of wear and tear and moving things around on it before it starts to pill. I don't really have a plan other than I just want to show a bunch of different things. So I'm going to start with the paste. So I think what I might do is, and don't worry that this paste is going to leave a little bit of residue on your stencil. It still lies very flat, and so I'm not too concerned about using it without getting this off. If you notice, it will pick off with even just your fingernail, but I have a cleaning solution that will get this off. I just haven't bothered to use it yet, and I will show that at the end of this video. Another thing that I've done is I cover all of my little tubs of mixed media supplies with press and seal. This is a supply that you can get at the grocery store. I keep a roll of it in my craft room because I use it more crafting than I do in cooking. But as you can see, it just looks like this, and if you're not familiar with it, it's plastic paper. It looks like wax paper, but it's plasticky, and it has a low tack coating on one side of it, and it's designed to, as you can see, put over bowls and stuff in the fridge to keep the air out, and it makes a better seal than saran wrap does in some circumstances. And so I use it for all of my little mixed media tubs. What I love about it is it does keep a nice airtight surface, because sometimes these plastic on plastic jars, even if you get them on there really well, they're not completely airtight. And if you're going a long time between using your mixed media, which I do, I don't use mixed media all the time. I go through phases where I use it, but then I go through phases where my supplies will sit on my shelf for months and months and months and not be used. And I have lost a few items to dryness, to drying out. And so I started putting press and seal. It actually does two things. It does keep a nice airtight seal on your product, but it also keeps the lids from getting glued shut. Because sometimes if you've got like paint or gesso or something like that, and it got on the edges and it's still wet and you don't realize it, and you close this, now you've just sealed your jar closed and it's very hard to get it off. So that helps with both of those things. So I will peel that back, and I just try to use the same piece of press and seal over and over again for as long as I can. So as you can see, when you open up this jar, it's going to look like this. It's very thick. It doesn't come out of the jar. It doesn't even, it takes a long time before it even starts to move in there from gravity. So you will have to scoop it out. And like I said, you don't need a fancy palette knife tool. You can just use a popsicle stick if you want to. So I'm just going to give it a little bit of a stir because it has separated a little bit in there. And I don't want to waste too much of this, and you don't need to use a whole lot. So I'm going to take about that much of it. That might even be more than I need, but I can always scoop some back in. And now I'm just going to basically just scrape it on, just like you're buttering your toast. And so, as you can see, it's a little bit trickier to do this. I should probably move the whole thing up with a flat surface versus an offset. So the reason I love using these palette knives, if you happen to have one on hand, is that it's just a little bit easier. You can hold your hand up in the air instead of having to kind of, scrape it on that way. You get a little bit of a more comfortable angle. If you're going to be doing this a lot, it might be good to have these kinds of tools, but if you're just dabbling, like I said, the popsicle stick is fine, or whatever you can find at home. So I'm just going to scoop the rest of this back into the jar, and I'm going to pull this off. And show you what we have. Look at that. It's beautiful. So have a look at that. And look at the texture you get with a stencil paste. I'm going to put this up here to dry. It actually doesn't take too long to dry. I have a couple here that are already dry from when I played with it the first time. And as you can see, it sticks really well. Like, you don't have to be, it's not very fragile. You don't have to be super careful with it or anything, but look at how it dries to this beautiful glossy gold reflective. Now with stencil paste, because it is thicker, if it dries on your stencil, it can leave some bulkiness that can actually get in the way of the effectiveness of your stencil, because you need a nice flat surface for a stencil to work nicely. So I took a little bit of water and I am just wiping it gently. You want to be careful with an intricate stencil like this. You just don't want to bend back any of the little intricate pieces there. So I'm being pretty gentle with it. If you wash it soon enough, water is enough to get the majority of the bulk off. As you can see, it does leave a gold residue, but that residue won't matter, especially if you're always using the same side of the stencil over time. Keep on watching, and in a few minutes I will show you or tell you the solution that I use for cleaning stencils and brushes, and it will help give you a more thorough cleaning if you wanted to get this super clean. So that's the main use of the gold paste. You could also use the gold paste just to smear a bit of gold onto something. If you have a pre-made tag or embellishment or something and you just want to give it a little something something, you can just take a little bit of this paste. I mean, that is an awful lot of this paste, but you can take a little bit and you can just smear it. It's going to give you some texture as well as a swipe of glitter, which is really nice. And you could even, do a little bit of this to get it really textured looking if you like that kind of a look, like a speckled look, I guess that is. Or you can just smooth it out and give it that kind of real painterly look of a swipe of gold across the bottom. And then if you were using other layers and whatnot on this tag, that might make a really nice little detail at the bottom. And just to show you that you can actually use the brush here with this paste, what I would do is smear the paste out on a palette surface of some sort. This is a really good thing to do with your leftovers. That's what I did with some of these samples that I have. And then you can just take your brush, and I'm only getting it on the very, very ends of my brush. You don't want to get this stuff all through your brush. So I picked it up. You can see it's all in there. And then you're going to get a much, much lighter look, a much more subtle look, but it's very pretty. It also looks great on a tag. It would look nice on the very bottom part of a tag. In fact, let's do that. Let's grab another tag. We'll take a little bit more of this paste. We don't need that much, just a little bit, like that. Pick it up. I'm using a very, very light hand. I don't want to smoosh this into the bristles. I just want it on the very edge of the bristles. So now, have a look at that. Isn't that pretty? What a nice detail if you were just putting a little bit of journaling on here and that, add a couple of enamel dots, little pretty ribbon on the top, and that is a really beautiful tag. So now we do want to wash this because we just used paste on it. So this is where you could use water. I'm using my little miracle solution here. Watch to the end if you want to know what my little miracle solution is. It is paintbrush friendly. It's not going to harm your paintbrush, and it takes all of that out. It does leave a little bit of residue. So I don't want my solution to be in my brush, so I'm just going to now use a little bit of plain water just to get some water into those bristles. It feels softer, I can tell. If you're not sure if there might be paint in it, you can actually feel it, but you can also see that the bristles, although they're stained because I've used this brush a couple times now, it's nice and clear. And the nice thing about using a popsicle stick is you can just toss it. You don't have to worry about cleaning it or anything. So here we have a few different looks that you can get with paste. We have the full-on use it as its intended look, which gives you this beautiful raised texture with the beautiful shininess of the gold. We have a use it very lightly with a stencil brush to get this, and it does have a bit of a shimmer to it. I'll show you some that are dried just so that you can see that it does have a slight metallic reflective look to it. The light hits it differently than it would on a flat paint. This is going over it a couple of times with a stencil brush to get a little bit richer look. And you can also swipe it. You can spackle it, swipe it, and do anything to add that texture. Next, I'm going to play around with some of my products that I have in my stash and just see what kind of looks I can get with these stencils. I think I'm going to play with this one first. There's all sorts of different mats and tools that are designed specifically to help with this, but I like my good old-fashioned washi tape. A little bit of washi tape will hold this in place, and I don't need to go from edge to edge. If I needed to go from edge to edge, I could have just cut my piece a little bit bigger so that I'd have room for some washi tape to hold it in place. You don't want your stencil to be moving around while you're doing it, or you won't get as nice of an image. You won't get as crisp of an image. But if you do move it by mistakes, it doesn't look that bad either. And usually just one piece is enough to keep it in place. So I'm going to start with my lightest color of pink. I have 3 pink oxides here. I have spun sugar, worn lipstick, and picked raspberry. And I haven't played a whole lot with my distress inks. So you will get a better sense of what color you're getting if you just put a piece of paper behind your little piece of plastic. So this is just some plastic from a product. So I'm just going to be getting some ink on there. If you had re-inkers, you could just dab a couple drops of re-inker on there. And now I want to show you the difference in what you get when you use this ink just as it is and what you get when you use this ink adding a tiny bit of water. So I'm just going to pick up this pink ink using the very tips of this brush, and now I'm going to and that's the look that you get. Isn't that pretty? Very pretty. I'm not going to lift it up to show you yet, because I still want to be able to kind of add some more. So let's add a little bit more. I think I'll add a bit more of the same color. And take it out to the edges a little bit. It doesn't look like I'm getting anything on there at all, but look, when I lift it up, you can see that there actually is a very light pink color going down. Using one piece of washi tape and using it as a hinge gives you a really nice opportunity to check your work and see how it's coming along. So there's my first coat. Now I'm going to add a little bit of the darker pink. This would be our medium colored pink. pick up some of that color with my brush, just like that. And now I'll start in the center and work my way out. You see how that looks? Beautiful. Pick up a little bit more here. And if you wanted a subtle mix, you could leave it pretty light, and if you wanted it darker, you just go over it more times. The more times you go over it, the darker it looks. You could mix colors, but be very careful that these are additives. So if I were to try to mix pink and green together here, for example, I'd get a lovely shade of brown, which is not at all what I'm looking for. Now, for this darkest color, I'm going to be a little bit more selective, and I'm just going to kind of go in the centers of some of these. I can check and see, does that need more blending? It does. So I can see some little so there. I'm getting a little bit of shading, as you can see. I think I'm pretty much finished now, so I'll just go with that. So as you can see, there's nice variation in the coloring of this, and that is really, really beautiful. I could cut it down into a project life card if I wanted to with a die. I could cut it down into a tag if I wanted. I could probably get a couple of tags here with this, or one if I wanted it more kind of centered like that. Might look nice like that, kind of going gradual from light to darker. Or I could just use it as a piece of paper that I could tuck in to a layer someplace. So let's see what kind of a look we get if we were to add some water to our inks. I'll use the same inks just so we can see the comparison, and I'll use the same layers in the same stencil. So let's add some of the lightest spun sugar. And this time I'm going to add just a drop of water. Make sure you're not using your cleaner fluid if they're in the same containers like mine are. Now, as you can see, I'm picking, that gives me a lot more product. This is much easier. I'm able to use a much lighter hand. And look at the look that I'm getting already, much, much more vivid. However, what you'll notice is, and I'll show it, I'll take it off and show you, but what you'll notice is that the more liquid you use, the more bleeding you'll have, which means that these edges are not going to be as perfect as these edges are. So you're going to get a different look. You see how we've got some bleeding happening? The more liquid we use, the more bleeding you'll have. So I do want to get more of this up here. You'll notice that this paper, because it's mixed media paper, it reacts differently with a wet. There we go. Really beautiful. So let's add some of the darker ink. I think now I can go back to this side. Oh, this is the very dark. I skipped a step. So let's grab another piece of packaging. This is packaging from the stencil itself. I already used it with some gold, but that's okay. I will kind of move that up there. And this will be that worn lipstick shade. Oops. There we go. We'll add a small drop of water. It's a little bit more than I added for the other, which is a mistake, but that's all right. And you could layer them, but the other thing you could do is you could put the different shades and chunks in different places on this. So this is the look that we're getting so far. It's looking a little mottled because we've got two slightly different shades of pink here. And now we have the darkest pink, which is picked raspberry. Add a little bit of water to that as well. And these are distress oxides, so they do react with water, so it's going to change the look of them a little bit. There we go. See how we're getting quite a beautiful look with this that is different than the look that we get when we're using it with dry media. We could add even just like a little bit more water here, and we'll pick this up with my fan brush and just do a little bit of splatter. We could splatter on this one too. Very cute. So these are two different looks that you can get with one stencil and one set of products. Just add water versus don't add water. This baby wipe will keep my brushes wet until I'm ready to clean them so that the substance on it won't dry. So because I'm going to be using mists next, mists can be a little bit messier, so I've covered my surface with a large acrylic palette. This is a giant palette from the art store, but you could get a piece of foam core board from the dollar store. I often use those as well for misting, and they work really well. So I have another identical but much dirtier because it hasn't been cleaned in a while, one that I'm just going to place up against my computer so that I don't have any splatter going all over the place. I'll show you what this looks like from a different angle. So it basically looks like this. Now, I like my hinge, so I'm going to do the same thing. With these Heidi Swap ones, every company is different, but with the Heidi Swap ones, there are little bits of mica or some type of color substance in there that adds the shine to the color shine. And so you do have to get this fairly well mixed. You have to mix this for a long time to get a nice, strong mist. But some of the other colors you don't have to shake very much at all because, oh, my nozzle is clogged. Ah, there we go. It was just vacuum sealed. So as you can see, this is super vibrant, and I might not want quite that much vibrancy, and it's super wet, so you're probably going to get a fair amount of bleeding when you do it like this. But look at that. That's a fun look as well. You could mix colors really beautifully with this as well. I'm going to go get another color actually. I have some Color Mist, Mr. Huey's Color Mist Gold here. Oh, look at that. That's gorgeous. So a whole other look. And again, we have some bleeding, and that's okay. Very pretty. This would have been another good opportunity to pull the stencil off when it had all the mist on it and stamp it onto a separate piece of paper. That would have looked really beautiful as well. I'm going to set this aside to dry. So this cleaner that I've been using is a homemade cleaner. It consists of, I think it was 1/4 cup of Murphy's floor washing oil and a tiny squirt of dish detergent, and then you fill the bottle the rest of the way up with water. And I made it once many years ago, and I'm still using the same sprayer full of it. And as you can see, it's taking stuff off of my mat that was here before I even did today's project. It was full, it had gesso on it and it had some extra little bits, but they're all coming off with this cleaner, which is perfect. It will not damage your brushes. It will not damage your stencils. And so you don't have to worry about any of that. Okay, so let's try one more thing, because I know you might have, so if you're wondering what these are just inexpensive Amazon 4x6 cards. I use these for a whole bunch of different things. They're not great quality paper, so I wouldn't use them for stamping on or anything that actually goes in my projects, but I do use them for other things. So these will be my 2 palettes. Why don't I combine some gelatos? This time I'm going to use this stencil. And do I still have another piece of that paper? The Strathmore paper? I don't think I do. I'll get another one. I pre-cut papers into the size of cards. I just spend an evening every, well, it ends up just being every couple of years. I spend an evening just pre-cutting a whole bunch of card bases and card fronts and card insides, card mats. And then I have them for the whole, however long they last. So I'm going to use this stencil for this one. I like this plaid, and plaid is nice because it can be used at any time of year just by changing out the color scheme. And maybe I might do that. I might change out the color scheme on this one because I need to get a second color anyways. And maybe I'll make this one be more of an autumnal color of plaid. So I got a whole bunch of warms here. I just picked from my gelato stash, but if you had a set of these, or the Vicky Bouton colors, or Tim Holtz, or whatever, they all work exactly the same. They're just waxy substance that is water soluble. So I think what I'm going to start to do on this one is I'm just going to put down a base layer of this light yellow. It's a warm yellow. So I'm going to put this right here, and so that I can get, I'll show you how this looks if I just pick it up by itself. The bristles of my brush have picked it up, and now I can just kind of color the whole piece of paper so that it's not white, basically. I don't want my stripes that are going to be masked off, I don't want them to be a harsh white. I want them to be softer. So I could do this to the whole card. It might take me a few minutes to do that, not too long. But one way that I could make it go just a little bit faster is to add a tiny bit of water to this. And now it's just going to spread a little bit better. All right, we're looking good, we're looking good. So that's a nice base. It's not white anymore, it's more of an off-white. So that's just what I wanted. And now let's add a little bit of this orange. This is a very pumpkin-y orange. I'm gonna add a little bit of water. I want to leave some spaces for the other colors, so I'm kind of color chunking it here, randomly putting it and leaving some blocks open. And now I'm going to take my green. Oh, this is a very light green. This is lighter than I thought it was, so I might need to go back and get a different color. We'll see. We shall see. Now, I don't want orange on my brush, so I'm going to put a little bit of water here. And I'm just going to there. You can see if it's come clear by just putting it on a white piece of paper, and it seems to not be picking anything up. So let me see what this green ends up looking like. I don't think it's going to be right. but I'm using the brush to both blend it and pick it up. So I'm focusing on all those places that I left blank. Let's see how this is looking. Oh, that's looking really beautiful actually, but I do want a slightly deeper green. So I'll be right back with a different color. I don't want it to be lime green. I think I'm going to try this very dark green actually, but I think that if I'm light-handed with the dark green, it might give me the look I'm looking for. I'll pick some of that up. I don't have to change, I don't have to clean my brush because it's the same color family. It's not going to look bad mixed together. It's not going to give me brown or anything. Oh yes, that's what I'm looking for. Yes, definitely. Look at that. Oh, that's so pretty. I love it. Okay, let's keep going. Let's go just a tiny, tiny, tiny bit darker with the orange. Still have some of that other orange already there. So I'm going to go over some parts of the orange with this darker orange color. It's giving me a little bit more pop of color. Now let's add a little bit of this color green, whatever this is. It's like a grassy green, and more of that dark green as well. Just a little touch of water. And we'll mix those two together as well. Mix them right on the brush. And gelatos will sometimes leave little crumbs of waxy, intense color. And if that bothers you, you can just kind of keep on working it until they're all gone. But I kind of like that little surprise of extra pigment that you get every here and there. And I don't mind it, so I'm going to leave it in there. Look at that. That's very pretty. Very pretty. So I could make a project life card. Oops, we've got a little bit of intense color there. I could make a little project life card. I could actually make two of them. I could make a project life card and a little tag out of this one little tag here. In fact, I think I'm going to do that. So here we are. I'm just putting those on my Big Shot platform using my die cutting sandwich. Just put that through like that. Make sure we pick up that missing die so we don't lose it. And we have two beautiful cards here. Got some little die cut bits on that. There we go. Two beautiful little embellishments that I made myself. I could have made them to perfectly coordinate with a scenario that I had, and maybe the die cuts I had on hand weren't matching or working. I could pull out my stencils, pull out my inks, whatever I have on hand, and make something that's tailored to my exact requirements. That's the beauty of mixed media, but also the ability to have something super messy like this tucked in behind something. This would make a nice little card or tag as well. You could, it's still not dry, but you could cut this into tags as well and do all sorts of fun things with it. So here's just a recap of all the different things we did with the mixed media kit today. We created this beautiful textured stenciled snowflake pattern. This is probably my favorite thing to do with this mixed media kit. You can use this paste in small amounts with the stencil brush, and that looks like this. You can also just smear it on to get a little touch of gold in any place that you might want a little bit of extra gold. We also talked about using stencils with your inks. This is using one of the stencils with dry ink. You get a nice crisp look. It's a lot easier to control the ink and have it not bleed under the surface. This is the look you get using wet ink. You can get a more vivid look with less work with a wet ink, but you do get a bit of bleeding, which for some people they like that look, and that is another option. You can also mist right over a stencil and get a look like this, which is very beautiful and whimsical and relaxed. It might look nice on a background or in layers. You can use other forms of mixed media. Here I used some gelatos, but any waxy substance will give you, like distress crayons or Vicky Bouton crayons will give you a similar look. So these are just some of the looks that you can get with this mixed media kit using the brush with some things in your stash, or using the paste with a palette knife, or with the brush. So I hope that you found this helpful. If you haven't tried mixed media yet, I hope that this kit inspires you to get started mixing it up and customizing your layers and your pages. I hope that you found this helpful and informative. Take care and have a really great scrappy week. Feel free to check out any of these other videos that are listed here on your screen, and subscribe if you haven't already. I create scrapbooking process videos, project life, 12 by 12, and other tips and tricks videos right here on my channel every single week. Take care.